she and hers. Our service this morning explores our relationship with our bodies and how they can inform our spiritual practices. Throughout this service, there will be references to our senses and our physical selves. I encourage you to notice these when they come up and pay attention to your own reaction to them. Our opening words are from the Reverend Hannah Roberts Villeneuve. She is the minister at the UU Church of Cheyenne, Wyoming, not so far from here. She writes, "The cold air is bracing to our lungs these days. It burns as it comes in through our nose and throat, expanding to fill our chest with crisp oxygen, reminding us that we are blissfully, fearfully alive this morning. So breathe in, filled with the Spirit, and breathe out, laying down your burdens. For as we gather here, we bring the unfinished business of our lives and our hearts and our spirits, and our to-do lists, and the constant could you pleases from our families. In the midst of these commitments, it is easy to forget the blessings, to forget the miracles, to forget the heartbreaks, and most of all, to forget that being alive is like cold air in the lungs, so exhilarating it almost hurts. And so we seek refuge from to-do lists, from family conflict, from busyness. May we find something here that reminds us of the bracing shock of being alive and the comforting truth that here in this community, we do not face that exhilaration alone. Let us begin our worship service this morning by singing the song that's pasted to the back inside cover of your great hymnal, By the Light of Our Chalice.
I would like to welcome up our chalice lighter, Lily. As she lights our chalice, please say the words in your order of service. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, for the light of truth, and for the energy of action. Now you may be seated. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Norton, and I am today's lay worship leader. The pronouns I use are she and hers. I would like to welcome you this morning to South Valley Unitarian Universalist Society. We are an intentionally diverse religious community, and all are welcome here. We would especially like to extend a warm welcome to those of you who may be joining us for the first time. We are so glad you are here. and we would love to get to know you. This is a caring, supportive community. In the chapel in the back of the sanctuary, there is a book to write down your joys and concerns. Please feel free to share a joy or concern there, and a member of our Caring Circle team will follow up with you. Children are always welcome in the sanctuary during the service. If you'd like to have us take care of your little ones during the service, we have a nursery downstairs. We also broadcast the service on closed circuit TV downstairs, in the social hall, and in the nursery. After the service, everyone is invited downstairs for fellowship and to check out the Happenings Hub, where you will learn about many activities that are part of the South Valley community. In addition, in the order of service, there are announcements that will help you learn about ways to participate in the life of this community. As we begin, I would ask you to please place your electronic devices in worship mode. We do encourage you to take pictures, post on Facebook and Twitter, but do so quietly. Thank you. Please now, as we share the warmth of our community, turn and greet your neighbor and welcome them into worship.
We have so many friends here today. All right, I'm going to do something new today. So I want to remind everyone and myself, it is truly time for all ages. So I invite everyone to participate as we do a little warm-up to get back into our bodies. You know, I moved here from Illinois, and when I was in Illinois, I did not have a car. It was very flat. I could walk anywhere I wanted with no trouble. And so I did. I walked to work. I walked to the grocery store. I had a job where I was moving around all the time. And then I moved here, and I love it here because I can drive anywhere I want. It's very easy. But the result is, when I'm sitting there sending all the parents emails that the spring 2020 packet is out and you should read it, and what happens is I start to forget that I have elbows. And I start to forget that I have knees because I don't really move them around. So about a month ago, I was somewhere where I sat on the ground and I couldn't stand up again. And the reason was I didn't feel like I was in my body and I wasn't stretching. So as we get ready for the service, we're going to come together, we're going to do a little warm-up. So I invite you to stay seated. I'm going to stand so you can see me. I'll speak all the directions and I'll do them too. If something doesn't feel right for your body, just do something else or take a moment to rest. So I invite you to either close your eyes, look at a spot on the ground, or look at me. Just really focusing on how you feel, how the chair feels under your legs, how the chair feels behind your back. When I sit up as straight as feels right, you don't have to be the straightest person in the world. We all know that. Just sit up as straight as feels correct. And chest up, shoulders back, and take a breath in for 4 beats. Ready? In, 2, 3, 4. You'll go all the way down to your belly. Out, 2, 3, 4. And do it again. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. And I encourage you to maintain this deep breathing as we go. So to start, we're going to look to our left, this way. 1, and hold for 8 counts. Ready?
hold. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now to our right. Hold for 8 counts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Come back to center. We're going to roll our heads all around like the globe. 1, 2, 3, 4. Other way. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now feel our shoulders. Come back to center. We're going to roll back for 4. Roll forward for 4. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4. Forward for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to bring our arms up to midpoint and above our head. And if this doesn't feel right for you, you don't have to do it. But bring it up to midpoint, palms down. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then reach up to the sky like you're trying to throw your hands into the sun. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now back to midpoint with palms up. We're going to hold here. And as you hold, notice how it feels. Maybe it's manageable right now. It doesn't feel like it's hard, but notice that as you continue to hold, it's getting heavier and harder. Just like when there's a problem in your life, you're holding to yourself or holding in your body. The longer you hold it, the harder it is to maintain. And now we're going to let go and drop. And feel how our arms are tingly. Feeling your body a little bit more. I know I can feel everything like, oh, it's really here. So as we're going through service, like Reverend Karen said, notice how you're feeling. And as we go downstairs for our lessons, notice how it feels when we're sitting down. So my friends, what we're going to do today is preschool to 5th grade. We're having our Hanukkah lesson. And in junior high, we're having a lesson in our classroom. So the Hanukkah lesson will go until the service ends. Junior high will go until noon. If you're new and you have a form for me, please bring it down. And if you're new and you don't have a form for me, come on down and talk to me. All right, we're going to head out now. Thank you, everyone. These words are from the Reverend Erica Hewitt. Let us remember and celebrate this morning that each of our bodies was woven together in the depths of mystery. Cells multiplying, tissue taking form, organs taking up their function. And under the silky cotton, all under the silky cover of skin. Let us gather in reverence for the gift of these bodies, whatever their ages, their shapes, their abilities, and may we know them to be channels of the world coming alive through us. These bodies, these blessings, bring the world to life through seeing, taste, hearing, scent, and touch. May we bring to our intricately woven bodies a sense of sacred caretaking. In doing so, let us also be grateful for the embrace of the holy, the presence that creates and sustains us, the mystery that knit together each of our bodies, and the force of love that celebrates our desires. I'd like you to call to mind anybody who's on your heart and your mind right now. We're just going to just hold a minute of silence here together so you can be thinking on that person.
If you would like, you may now speak the names of those people on your hearts, living or dead, that this community might hold them up in prayer and love. May we hold each of these people in our hearts. May we love and support one another in all things. Amen. Please join in singing number 391, Voice Still and Small, just from your seats.
Tom and I originally grew up, and my husband, who is not with me today because he's in a facility for Alzheimer's. When we first came, he had developed dementia, but was able to participate for several years. We grew up on the East Coast, and he in Massachusetts and I in New York State, near West Point, actually. I was a member, but my family was a member of a Presbyterian church. And on the way to Sunday school, we listened to the Mormon Tabernacle Choir because my father loved good music and actually had a nice voice and played the piano. Tom grew up in a congregational church. We married after college, and we sort of have had a nomadic life. We've lived in 7 states because he was an educator who was in charge of a superintendent in large cities. Which has been wonderful because we have lots of friends from coast to coast. But we discovered Unitarianism and a Unitarian church in our neighborhood around the corner when we lived in Oklahoma City, which we were there for 4 years, and discovered what a wonderful congregation we had, and we really loved the philosophy of the church. We kept moving around, and eventually, in 2014, we were in Boston for 18 years, but in 2014, we moved to Sandy, Utah to be closer to our daughter and her 3 children. She was a single parent at that time, so we filled in taking kids and doing things that grandparents often do. We both love music, and so when we discovered that this church was really in our neighborhood, we hardly have to go very far because we just live a mile or 2 away. We joined the choir. Tom has a nice voice, and we found a very welcoming, wonderful community here. People kept him on track singing as his dementia keyed in, which was wonderful for him. A little difficult, I think, for people in the choir who just maybe wanted to sing and not be concerned about where he was. But anyway, they were very gracious and kept him here singing with the rest of us. I, of course, joined the choir too, and have continued to this day, and I'm grateful for John. As I mentioned, he has Alzheimer's, and he does come occasionally, but one doesn't know what's going to happen, and so I may try to get him here for Christmas Eve service, we'll see. But I immediately joined the hospitality team and some other things. And I was asked if I would rejoin the church. I became members, which is very important in this community, especially since I serve on the Leadership Development Committee. And you have to be a member for 6 months to be eligible to serve in certain, like be on the board and to serve in certain places and certain committees. So this is my plug. Please, if you are really interested in staying with us, please become a member because we need you desperately. I also have been grateful to Susan, who's putting me in touch with you. Sometimes go down to the homeless youth resource center and serve meals. And if any of you want to try doing that, it's really an upper. The kids are amazing, and I've never had one that did not say please and thank you. And they're not just kids, they're young adults, many of them. So I've learned a lot about the community thanks to the congregation and all of you, and I'm very, very grateful for being here. Singing feeds my soul, and this community feeds my soul. And so that's why I'm here. Thank you.
In the spirit of our wider community, we at South Valley split our Sunday morning offering with a charitable organization that aligns with our values and principles. For November and December, we have chosen Candy Cane Corner, a special holiday store that provides an empowering holiday shopping experience for people and families experiencing homelessness in our community. Family members and individuals visit the store with their case manager and select beautiful new gifts for their children and loved ones. Candy Cane Corner is sponsored in partnership between the Road Home and the Volunteers of America, Utah. Will you join me, please, in saying the words printed in the order of service for our offering? We are this church. We are its hands, its heart, its voice. Together we share in the wealth of this community and sustain it with our gifts.
We have started a new practice a couple of weeks ago of blessing our offering after it has been collected. You would join me in just holding a space for this blessing. Love, through all of us, blesses and multiplies all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. May these gifts collected today be a blessing to South Valley and to Candy King Corner. Thank you.
You have to know your body is the home of God, by Rebecca Parker. You have to know your body is the home of God, and this is the purpose of Christmas. The rose blooming in the wilderness is the unfolding of your pleasure. As the fingers peel an orange and sweetness buds in the mouth. The bright star in the night sky is the sudden clarity of your instinct for joy. The birth cry in the night is your child falling into the dark in your arms holding her. The terror of Herod's murderous intent is your rage that would prefer death to change. The singing angels is your voice at church. Not sure of the tune, but certain for a moment that there is glory. The animals breathing their warm breath in the fragile stable are your emotions, kneeling into the body of the earth at ease in the presence of God. Mary is you, God in your body. Joseph is you, sheltering God in the world. This is the key to the mystery. The Word became flesh, and we are the dwelling place.
choir and John for creating some beautiful music for our service today. Today I'm trying, I feel like every Sunday I say this, but today I'm trying a new experiment. and thinking about our bodies and realizing that sometimes when I stand behind the pulpit, then I feel like in some ways it serves to protect and it serves to hide. And while sometimes we want to protect and hide, on a day when I'm talking about bodies, I think it's important to not be behind something. So here I am out front. While many people at this time of year are especially thinking about the various holidays, this is the time of year I think about when 3 years ago I was diagnosed with atrial fibrillation and heart failure. It was the Sunday going into my second week of finals during my first semester at Union Theological Seminary in New York City. I have had asthma all of my life, but I was completely unprepared for a heart diagnosis. I had been having shortness of breath for several weeks, but I had been attributing it to asthma, and I kept taking the emergency inhaler over and over again, and I just could not figure out why I kept having this breathing problem, but I felt like I did not have time to go deal with this. Who has time when you have 10 papers to write or whatever? I just can't deal with this right now. I was ignoring the shortness of breath, determined to keep my nose to the grindstone and keep on going. But then, one day, my side began hurting. It began from just ordinary pain to like this extreme pain. And I told myself that if it wasn't gone within a certain period of time, I would have to go to the emergency room, which I did. When I talked to the ER doctor and told him about my side pain, he noticed that when I was describing this pain to him, I kept gasping in between words. But by that time, that was the norm. I was used to talking that way, but he said there's something wrong here, and so he wanted to do an EKG. And I thought, and I even argued back with him because I was in so much pain. I'm like, just give me some pain meds. And like, there's something going on. And so he had them do an EKG on me. And totally to my complete surprise, they said that I was in this thing called atrial fibrillation, which before that day I had never even heard of. What that means is that your heart is beating out of rhythm. If your heart normally on its own, sitting here, it's just beating on its own, no problem. But if you have atrial fibrillation, or AFib for short, then every once in a while it does these extra beats because you have these cells that sometimes go out of whack and are telling your heart to do extra beats. And there is really not a lot that you can do about it. And then not that I did not know that I even had this situation going on because I wasn't experiencing heart palpitations, I didn't have any chest pain, I didn't have any of the normal symptoms people talk about with heart issues other than I was having trouble breathing, but which I thought again was asthma. If you have asthma, please be careful because it's not always just an asthma situation. AFib can also be dangerous because it can lead to stroke. Because if your heart's not beating at the normal rate, then a blood clot can go through and up to your brain. So I learned that that is a very serious thing. I was admitted into the hospital. This was the Sunday, again, the Sunday of the second week of finals. I had a paper due that week, and I had a final that was that week of my Old Testament class. So, of course, this was some time of extreme stress for me, but I didn't have a choice. When you are diagnosed with these heart things, you are admitted now. And so the very next day, they ran an echocardiogram. That test revealed that the plumbing part of the heart, the part that pushes the blood through, that part of my heart was operating at 20% when it should have been operating at 50%. When you have what's called this ejection fraction that is that low, then you are diagnosed with heart failure. Those are pretty scary words to hear for the first time. And it was only over time that I learned that those words, heart failure, aren't necessarily a sign that your heart is actually failing. And so I wish that they would come up with other words because it's not truly in that moment failing. It just seems pretty scary. During the course of my hospital stay, the medical staff performed a procedure called a cardioconversion, where my heart was shocked back into normal rhythm. I was so grateful that it worked. I got released from the hospital and I went back to finish the semester, thankfully with professors who were very understanding and they extended their deadlines. Unfortunately, over the last 3 years, which for many people, they have AFib maybe once, and it's no big deal, and they go back to their life as normal. But for me, AFib has become a normal part of my life. Very unexpectedly, whenever it wants to, my heart starts beating in its own rhythm. I have had 2 different procedures that are supposed to prevent it happening again. And I am on various meds that are supposed to help keep it from happening again. But there are no guarantees. I live at the whim of whenever my heart stops beating in normal rhythm. Even though this is a strange thing to live with, I was grateful to learn that my body only goes into heart failure when it is an AFib too long. So as soon as I find out or something that I now actually have a device implanted that helps me learn when something is going on, that as soon as I can find out and get stressed, then my body does not go into heart failure. So it's frustrating to learn that this is now like an ongoing part of my life instead of just this one-time thing. It was hard to take on this identity of this is this thing that I have to deal with. Especially because it is something beyond our control. Our bodies tend to be like that, right? They do what they do, and we may or may not have any control over it at all. While I would prefer not to be in this situation, I can say that my diagnosis has forced me to come to terms with the reality that I was living my life like my brain and my personality were somewhere over here, and my body was somewhere over here, like they were just totally, vastly different things, and I never had to think about like how they actually integrated. After my heart diagnosis, I became aware of the ways I had been trained to keep my mind and my body separate, and how that also affected ways that I related to people, in particular people with marginalized identities and people of different abilities, and how they experience the world. But somehow, along the way, I had been trained to have a sterile kind of thinking about others by using the word people, never thinking about bodies and the bodies that they actually occupied. Somehow I made that 2 separate things. I think somewhere along the way, I had been trained that bodies were gross. That bodies were not to be acknowledged, that they were just like this thing you had to just deal with, but they weren't like real. I don't know. I've done a lot of interrogation around this, and I don't have an answer, but somehow we've been trained to separate these things. I remember that a few years before I entered seminary, the Black Lives Matter movement was beginning. I was and am totally supportive of this movement. At the time, I had a hard time with the BLM activists talking about black bodies instead of black people. I kept thinking, why are these activists talking about bodies? It was only through getting this diagnosis that I came to see that I had been separating people from their bodies in my thinking, just like I had done to myself. Another physical thing that happened to me while attending seminary was that several times my feet were in so much pain that I went to see a podiatrist and got steroid injections. That situation reminded me that anyone I'm interacting with at any time could be in physical pain, and I could be completely unaware. People don't always tell us what they're physically experiencing, and it is my role, especially in those experiences of having physical pain, of having to remind myself other people could be in pain right now. I need to be more patient. Because whenever you've been in pain, I'm sure you know, it's hard to connect with other people, to say what you need, and we don't always feel comfortable saying that out loud. My preaching professor, Dr. Lisa Thompson, repeatedly reminded us that the words we say land on, and she used the words, bodies in the room. I used to think that was a really impersonal thing to say, but now I see it as very, very real. There is nothing more personal than talking about your flesh and blood. This is the body. I keep thinking religiously and theologically about the ways that we have separated ourselves from bodies. If you have ever experienced being in need of support after a surgery, or you have a chronic illness in which you need help from others, I believe you can relate to the awareness that there is nothing more intimate than needing help to care for your physical body. When I interact with each of you in various settings, and when I'm preaching, I try to keep in mind what I'm saying is landing on bodies. It keeps me more accountable to potential hurt or harm that I could cause. It makes me even more responsible for this work of ministering to you. I hope by saying this out loud, you also become aware of how the words that you say lands on bodies in the room, bodies you are interacting with. Being thoughtful and caring isn't just a nice thing to do. Everything we say has a physical impact on somebody else, whether we actually touch them or not. We are responsible to each other. One other way that I learned about bodies and minds being separated were through the conservative religion that I grew up in. The world I grew up in was very, very gender segregated. Boys did this, girls did that. At last weekend's Beyond Categorical Thinking workshop, when we talked a little bit about gender, some of the women who are older than me talked about learning that men and boys got to grow up, as they described it, living in their bodies. And they looked at amazement at these men who grew up acting like, moving through the world like it was the most natural thing to do. Although I am younger in chronological years, I had the same experience because of growing up in a conservative religious environment. If bodies were ever talked about, it would be about controlling them, what they looked like in particular. Girls were supposed to look one way, and if you didn't conform to that, if you didn't physically do those things, you were in trouble. It was all about control, not about realizing that your body is also a place where you can experience power and joy and the world. All of those kinds of experiences were not talked about because maybe that was just not a reality for many people in the world I grew up in. Although I left that religion as a teenager, it still has had long-term effects. Because we weren't allowed to play sports or be active in any activity that might actually show our bodies, such as gymnastics, and of course, especially not dancing. Most of my life, I didn't think about this because I really didn't notice. But when I moved to North Carolina in 2005, I thought, I need to find some friends. And I moved to North Carolina only knowing one person. And so I found out about a GLBTQ co-ed softball league, and I thought, how hard can this be? I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I did not grow up playing games, and I did not grow up knowing that you could do physical things, but I thought, surely I can go out and do this. But I was completely wrong. I watched my teammates with a sense of awe of their abilities to be comfortable playing this game as it was second nature to them. They grew up moving. That was their norm. I had moments when I was jealous of their ability to play so easily. It took me a while, but I finally realized that they had years of experience of playing, which meant that they had something I didn't, muscle memory. I can't ever make up for that. Their bodies instinctively knew when to put their arms out to catch the ball. I was always running. They knew exactly when to swing into the ball that was coming at them to hit it. I was always waiting till the last second. I had a coach, she said that I was the most patient hitter she ever had, and I'm just afraid. So I was just waiting until it really came at me to actually hit it, but they knew, they instinctively knew how to move. I did not have any of that, and you can't make up for that at any time. They did all of these activities without a second thought because they had been trained how to do them for years. I, having no muscle memory at all for these movements, struggled at every game until I finally said, okay, this is enough. I am not ever going to, to really feel like I can do this. And moved on. I did make some friends. So it solved that problem. But instead of sports, you could say that religion and worship is what lives within me as muscle memory. While I no longer have those conservative beliefs, religion itself has always been important to me, and I have never somehow been able to completely walk away. In fact, I've become more engaged, just in a different way. When I was in seminary, I was amazed that muscle memory extends to religious physical practices that, like the ones that my colleagues in other faiths have. I'm so grateful that I went to an interfaith seminary where I could experience that. My Jewish colleagues prayed several times a day in a specific pattern that included bowing. I once tried going to one of their prayer services because in the prayer world that I grew up in, it was all sitting. And so I go to this prayer service and they're moving. What is happening here? And knowing that I would never be able to learn that. It was their muscle memory. My Muslim colleagues prayed 5 times a day, prostrating their bodies in prayer. My Catholic colleagues knew exactly how to cross themselves. I have never been able to figure this out, what the right pattern is. They know. They will. That is instinctual for them. I'm sure many of them could do it in their sleep if they needed to. I graduated seminary and came here to South Valley convinced that we, Unitarian Universalists, the most protesting of the Protestants, who decided to leave all of these things behind, had no body movements as part of our worship. And in a way, I was feeling kind of sad about it. However, being here has reminded me of the ways that specific types of worship are now hardwired into my physical body. I didn't realize they were there until I wasn't doing them. Somehow like you have a normal activity and all of a sudden that's not happening anymore. And you're like, wait a minute, something's missing? That was what my first couple of months here were like. For example, when I first started working here in August, I struggled with the way that this congregation then, and sometimes still does, closes with the postlude after the chalice extinguishing, where everyone sits back down and listens to the music, then the benediction words are said, and the service is over. The first couple of times of doing that, I truly felt like I was wearing a straitjacket. It is absolutely against my nature and the years of training in various congregations to sit back down after giving a sermon. I just really am trying to stand, and I cannot, it's just really hard for me to sit back down. My body goes into a kind of rebellion, and my mind starts screaming, this is wrong, what is going on, what is happening? I could not figure this out for weeks, what was going on. I have also been physically trained to walk down the aisle and greet people after the service in the recessional. The couple of times I have tried to do this here, people look at me in confusion. What are you doing? Because you are not trained to do a recession line. This is not your way of operating. So I have learned that the ways that I am trained physically don't necessarily work together with the ways that you have been trained physically. It's been fascinating to experience this. I've had to notice my own reaction and figure out how I can create ways to get my actual physical needs. There was a time when I didn't think physical needs were very important, but I've come to the other side. Physical needs are actually important, and so how do I work through here, having my physical needs met, and honoring this congregation? It's a balance that I'm working through. So towards that end, I have tried to add a few physical elements into the service, because I believe that our bodies are part of worship and part of the holy. For example, I added the sharing the warmth of community time to the service. I did that because I wanted to build in a time for folks to say hello to people. Maybe some of you came in late and sat down next to somebody and you didn't have a chance to say hello. I want to build more time for community, and so that is one of those ways. It brings new energy to the room, and it has many of you getting up and moving around. The service isn't just about who is standing up here. It is about all of us together. All of you are a part of the service. Your energy matters. In addition, I added the moment of having the offering brought back up into the sanctuary after it is gathered. Previously, right after it was gathered, it was brought into the office back there to be counted after the service. When I led the service on our relationship to money a few weeks ago, I asked that the offering be brought up back to the front because I felt that the unintended message, and I don't mean to say that this was the actual message, the unintended message it sends when money is collected and then whisked out of the room, locked in a room, it sends the message that we need to get the money out of the room. And the way we've been doing this for a couple of weeks, the ushers bring the offering back up to the front. The energy stays in the room. They've collected and it is now here. It is still in the space. Rebecca and I have also changed the way that the children and youth leave the sanctuary together. They walk through the sanctuary and go down the back stairs instead of these stairs behind me. We wanted you to see all of the children and to experience their energy in the space as they walk out. Their energy matters too, even if they're only here for part of the service. Sometimes movement is each of us moving as individuals. Sometimes it is other people moving in the space, but it is movement nonetheless. Our bodies, they help us experience the dynamicness of being truly alive. Whether it's through our senses, our skin, the way we move in the world, the spiritual, our energy, whatever you call it, all of that is present and it helps you be alive. It is my hope that you notice the way the energy flows through you, what you are attracted to doing and what you are not attracted to doing, and give whatever that is the attention that that needs. In closing, I would like to tell you about a time recently where, once again, in my spiritual body practices, I try to pay attention to what is bothering me and where I'm feeling discomfort. But I wanted to tell you about a story about where I have ignored that recently. Recently, I didn't pay attention to something about how I was feeling. When I arrived here at South Valley, I was given a list of services that are traditionally done here. Now, you know in church life that tradition means I did it last year and now everybody thinks this is tradition. So I have no idea what tradition actually means here, but that is the truth at every single congregation everywhere, so I'm just letting you know that. That is the truth. One of the services that I was given these titles on is this all-holiday service that happens around this time of year. I kept thinking this over, and if you notice that I'm using the word thinking, that I wasn't feeling, I wasn't in my body at that time. I kept thinking it over, and I watched last year's video on YouTube, and I was like, I don't even understand how this works, especially theologically. How do I wrap my mind around this? How do I do this respectfully so that these traditions are actually honored in this way? I was really uncomfortable with doing this. So instead of actually creating that space, I moved forward with something else about creating a worship service that honors our Unitarian roots in Christmas. But then, recently, I was told about an interaction here where the constant Christmas focus for the last few weeks and for the next week is causing harm or has the potential to cause harm to those who celebrate other holidays. Instead of being willing to stay in my discomfort, I moved to do something that was more in my comfort zone than this congregation's. I could see the train coming at me. I knew it was important, but I chose differently. And for that, I apologize. When I was made aware of how something I created was and could cause harm, I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. You ever know that feeling like, oh, I really screwed up here? And I knew I needed to make a change. Therefore, next week's service has been changed to celebrate the time of miracles and wonders, the celebration of the light of the temple, celebration of light returning through the winter solstice, and remembering that Unitarian and Universalists also have our own light that we have shared with the world. I will continue to work on staying in my discomfort and interrogate it instead of turning away. As we bring this service to a close, I pray that the way you physically experience the world brings you into a greater connection with the divine. May your senses awaken your spirit. May your heartbeat always be true. May it be so. Amen. Please join in Body Your Spirit by singing number 168, One More Step. To notice how you are feeling and to have compassion for others in the world. Amen.